I now call to order this regular meeting of the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors. We'll start off with an invocation by Ms. Binder, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Miller. Please stand as you're able.
Please, Lord, guide us to make the best decisions for our constituents and the ratepayers of the Service Authority. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Miller, are there any amendments to the agenda?
No, sir.
And I'm assuming Ms. Cleveland hasn't jumped online? Hearing that she's not, we will open the floor to public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to speak this evening? No one here in the audience. Is there anybody online, Mr. Dines?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we will close public comment and move on to reports of members of the board. Ms. Binder?
Thank you very much. First off, I want to thank the staff and those, Mr. Miller, for reacting to my phone call on a Sunday about a pump alarm that went off. One question, I thank you all for taking care of that, but I wanted to ask, how do we get notification for alarms, just so the public knows?
So actually, on the end of the general manager's report, I had asked that Mr. Reisenbeis talk about the process of, when we get notifications, and then, if we need to include that. I don't think anything comes out on a KG alert. That would be the way to, provide it normally, but we can let Mr. Reisenbeis talk to that, and, what happens, what usually triggers an alarm, and how they are notified, and how they, their responsiveness. Obviously, in this situation, it was a power situation, but yeah, we can talk about that if you would like, unless you would like to do it right now.
No, I can wait to the general manager. I just wanted to make sure we covered it because there was a lot of questions about that, and I said I would bring it up in my board report. And then the last part is I just want to address something, especially for the resolution for the board of directors to initiate a process for termination and dissolution of the service authority. And there's a lot of dates on here, but I just wanted to add some stuff to the timeline. We did start initiating of conceiving of talking about this. It's been talked about many times. When I was the board chair, Aqua approached us a couple of times about purchasing the service authority, and there's reasons for private sale and not private sale. But I did find out recently that there were even other options like a co-op, and I'm just kind of disconcerted that we didn't explore more options before bringing this into the county service authority. I understand the economic development aspect to it. That's a main driver of this, and the businesses that are looking to come to this area. But in the end, the citizens, when we bring it in as a utility, the customer should not have to pay for economic development. But I think some of the businesses need to also pay for economic development, and not all of the citizens have to pay for the infrastructure. I mean, we do want to attract businesses and bring in infrastructure, but the citizens should not be the bearer, just like the customers of the service authority, for all of the infrastructure that is needed to bring them here for the revenue that we haven't gotten yet, but will projected to come. And lastly, I was part last year after March of 2022, I was part of a work group with Mr. Parker to talk about different options for the service authority. And we came up with some suggestions. Nothing was really agreed upon. And then in September, it came back up. It started to stir up again. So I just want to make sure that this has not been, this particular merger has not been this long process. I'm just concerned that we keep rushing things. And I know that's an unpopular comment, but it is concerning because I've found out there are other options that maybe we could have explored. And one thing I want to make sure is that we have a timeline, that we decide on something and a vote on that makes us stick to that, so that there's a process. We need to look at Who is going to be the director of it? What will be the organizational structure? I know we've talked about it, but we haven't solidified it. One other thing is there going to be a board of directors? Is it going to be customer based? Is it going to be board of supervisors? These are all things that need to be discussed and shared with the public. And I even though we have these public meetings, we don't have a newspaper. I think we need to involve the citizens a little bit more in the process. Now, it is on the citizens too to be engaged, but we need to be more engaged also. And that is my comment. Thank you.
Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No report.
Mr. Morris?
Nothing, sir.
Ms. Cleveland's not here this evening. I don't really have anything specific myself to report. I do encourage, though, vigorous conversation on the resolution. And I do encourage, as always, citizens to attend these meetings and get involved. It would save answering a lot of questions because they would hear it firsthand and be able to interact and ask those questions in the public comment period. So we appreciate people coming out. So just a general note, please join us. Please make your comments, put them on the record so we can take action if the comments warrant it. With that, I'm looking for a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion on the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion carries. Moving on to public presentations. First up is Mark and Bowden with the utility report.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the board. So we'll go through kind of an overview of the water and wastewater operations. Of course, a more detailed report of those operations are included in the monthly report that we provide. For water operations, we did have a dirty water complaint in the Fairview Beach area. That was responded to very quickly. The entire distribution system was flushed, and then the maintenance crews are on a cycle to flushing the system on a routine basis. Mammoth number 2 tower is in the process of being drained for repainting purposes, and so that will be good to get that completed. But overall, September was a good month for water operations. For wastewater operations, we are having some issues with the belt press at the Dahlgren wastewater treatment plant. This belt press is more of a vintage belt press, and it is very difficult to source parts for this press. We were able to obtain the parts for the press, but they're not only costly, but it can cause us some delays in getting the press back in operations. The press is very critical simply because it not only processes sludge from the Dahlgren wastewater treatment plant, but it also handles the solids from the other 4 facilities in King George County. And so that is a vital piece of our infrastructure, not just for the Dahlgren facility, but for all of the other facilities as well. So the problem will get worse for sourcing parts, other issues with the press. And so it's a matter of concern that we have, and we're going to be talking with county administration and King George Service Authority administration to figure out the next best possible steps. For Fairview Beach, there was a fecal coliform exceedance. The post EQ tank and the UV light channel were drained and cleaned in response. We had discussed this issue at the last meeting. And I had mentioned that we had looked at some historical data, some historical values, and we have seen that this is kind of a reoccurring problem this time during the year. And we have a feeling that it could likely be contributed to algae growth within the water column. And so for next year, we have a plan and a practice that we're going to implement ahead of time. And so hopefully we will not see these issues come this time. The UV light that is at Fairview Beach is in need of replacement and is scheduled for replacement. And we are working with Bryce Young to replace that UV light as well. For Oakland Park, the wastewater treatment plant, the EQ pump did fail in train A. This did result in a low F&M ratio, food to microorganism ratio. So the pump was repaired/replaced. And in order to get that process back online, we reseeded it from the other plant to put that system back into operation as quickly as possible. So those are our key highlights for the month of September. And I would be more than happy to take any questions that you have concerning either any of these comments or the comments that's shown in the report that you have.
Is there any comments?
Yeah, I have just one question. This is just thinking about because of the issue we had this weekend, is there a better way of notification you can see in the future that we need to have, that when a piece of equipment has an alarm that goes off, is that something that might be needed in our capital improvement plan to have a better system?
A better system of notification when something goes down, or?
That we could come and respond to an alarm. I'm going to use as an example.
Okay. There's many different ways to respond or track different assets in the infrastructure. Right now, there's only a limited amount of data that we can pull. For the most part, it can be a costly endeavor to put monitoring devices on each piece of equipment in the infrastructure to have a call out, a relay, if you will, to get a call from a maintenance technician to come in. It can be very costly, but I think that is one thing that we're looking at with the hop yard upgrades. And so as these older treatment plants come offline, the hop yard treatment plant that will be receiving the flow, those upgrades will be seen that they're performed in that upgrade for hop yard.
And I ask that because, some folks in the public don't understand the cost that comes with a lot of this, and they just assume that there's an alarm on everything. So it's good to hear that is an option, but these things do come with costs, the more automated you become. But thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us this evening and presenting your report. So with regard to the Dahlgren wastewater treatment plant belt press, you called it vintage. What do you mean by the term vintage? How old are we talking about?
Since the upgrades of the treatment plant occurred 2011, I believe, 2012. So it may not seem like that long, but the manufacturer of that belt press is no longer an entity. So in order to have parts or replacements for this belt press, we have to essentially manufacture them or have them manufactured for us.
Okay. And then my other question is with regard to page 16 of your report. And we know Perkins Corner is slated for decommissioning, but you mentioned in the operational notes a minor overflow of less than 1,000 gallons from the digester that was reported to the DEQ. You're working with maintenance to install a system that will sound an alarm and call the on-call service to prevent this from reoccurring. Can you tell us any more about that?
Yes, we actually did discuss that at the last meeting, and that's one of the reasons why we didn't put it into this highlight for this month. But we did discuss that at last meeting.
So that's the same one? It's not a new one?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
In regards to the alarms, I thought we discussed like 3-4 years ago about putting some signage on the facilities, on the building that says, if you see an alarm,
signs are
call
there.
this number daytime and this number after hours. Did we not?
Yeah, they're there, but I think what we're more talking about is the alarm goes off. If somebody doesn't call, how do we know it's going off? So like even like what caused that request for the signs was there was one going off at one of the Hop Yard pump stations for, I don't know, the whole weekend. And people were like, oh, it's been going, I had randomly saw it on the Facebook post. Oh, it's been going off for 2 days now. It's like, nobody called this.
Yeah, but I don't think everything is
But
got signage on it, because I don't recall anything on the St. Paul's well the last time I was at that building, and that does have some sort of audible alarm on the exterior.
Right. But for the collection system, that is under John's purview, so he can.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and address it right now. I think that would be appropriate.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We use SCADA with an off-site monitoring. It's cellular-based. It is somewhat antiquated. We're converting to multi-carrier cell dialers in them. We had situations starting with the rain on Saturday where we didn't have any phone communication. We lost all power in Fairview Beach and Potomac Landing. But as far as monitoring goes, we monitor level in the wet wells at the pump stations. We take run times, generator starts, AC power, that kind of thing. The issue that came up on Facebook was Bayberry. It had a high wet well. Cellular carrier was out because it's a single carrier modem. We didn't get the call right away. But once it does connect, and then what happens is our on-call phone gets the first call. Then it comes to myself, it comes to the crew lead, then it goes to the office. And then a lot of times the on-call will get a call from the sheriff from the number that's on the sign, which happened in Bayberry. And then just so happens the on-call guy is also our pump truck driver, so he was pulling loads from Perkins from their high digester. So he had to take the truck back, empty it, bring the truck all the way back, get a truck, bring it, and go check Bayberry. That one just took a while to respond to. It's just kind of a perfect storm kind of thing. As far as monitoring stuff, with what he mentioned with the cost, we use a contractor to provide our SCADA monitoring. The expense involved in having our own SCADA network with data lines coming to everything would be perfect. It would be great. We could monitor every point there is, but it's impossible to do with a cellular dialer and a contractor. It'd just be way too much money. I mean, it would run us out. But yeah, I mean, we do monitor every point we can at each site. The well lots, they're like St. Paul's, it does have an alarm, but it's actually in the building. It's the only place the alarm is. That's why we don't have signage on that, because nobody would really call. And actually, St. Paul's has just been totally rebuilt inside and out. So that one will be good for a while for you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
are there any other questions?
All right,
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Mbun? Thank you for the presentation. Moving on, Ms. Lackey.
Good evening. I wanted to give an update and possibly get board direction regarding 2 proposed water tower leases. These were matters that I mentioned were kind of underway, or at least under consideration by staff several months ago. They've progressed to the point where we have received an updated structural assessment from the companies that are proposing to install telecommunications equipment to the Monmouth Water Tower. As Mr. Imboden mentioned in his report, and I think Mr. Eisenweiss mentioned at the last meeting, the water tower is being repainted. It's kind of, in a way, an ideal time to consider these proposed leases, because the tower should be, in pretty good shape to accept some additional equipment attached to it. So in your agenda packet, you'll see an exhibit that was received from one of the proposals. It does actually, I had requested that the 2 companies who were seeking to locate, that they try to work together collaboratively so that we could see if we could actually accommodate both. My understanding is that we can. It's the 2 proposers are AT&T and Verizon, or their real estate teams or consultants are the ones who are seeking these leases. So there's some information about that in the packet. I am still continuing to exchange drafts back and forth for these two leases, but given the fact that the water tower is already draining and getting ready for repainting, and at least one of the two companies would like to, my understanding is one of the two companies actually already filed building plans as well with community development. So they're pretty far along. They're kind of anxious to get going. For purposes of comparison's sake, I mentioned in the board report, the written report, the two proposals are relatively similar. Verizon is proposing an initial 10-year lease term with 2 5-year renewal options, and they're proposing to pay rent for the first 5 years of $24,000 annually, paid in monthly installments, and there would be a 10% escalator every 5 years. And the other proposal, AT&T is proposing a 5-year initial term, but with 4 5-year renewals, so slightly longer in total possible duration. And they are proposing also an initial rent payment in the first year of $2,000 a month. I'm sorry, so they are proposing $2,000 a month in the first year, but they are proposing an escalator of 2% in each subsequent year. So if there is direction from the board for me to try and get the same payment schedule from both, that's one thing that I can explore as I finalize drafting. And then it's not spelled out in the wastewater authority's statutes that a public hearing is required. But if this was a matter before the Board of Supervisors, a public hearing, notice of public hearing would be advertised prior to consideration of the final leases. I have heard back from at least one of the companies that they would be willing to reimburse the costs of a public hearing if the board wants to go ahead and proceed with advertising a public hearing. So my thought is that if there are any initial comments on the kind of the essential terms of the lease, I can take those back into the final drafting. And once I'm satisfied that the lease or both leases are ready for in terms of legal sufficiency, if the board wants to give me authority to go ahead and advertise for upcoming public hearing, I would be happy to do that if that's the direction you all want to give me.
So anybody got some discussion comments? I would say we should match those two up. Running the quick mathematics, they're almost identical. Like the 2% escalator over a 5-year period is going to end up a little over $2,200 a month, and a 10% escalator at the end is going to end up at $2,200. So it might be good to do the 2% annually as opposed to just the every 5 years. That's kind of my feeling on it. That way you're getting a little bit more every year, kind of keeping up with, well, not even keeping up with inflation, let's be serious, but at least you're keeping up with some. But I'd like to see the terms matched if possible, so that we're giving everybody the same, kind of the same, and if somebody else comes in, it's like, this is the deal that we give people, but I'm all for getting extra money in the door. An extra nearly $50,000 a year doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I agree. And it needs to be, if someone else wants to come in, well, then you need to do better than what we already have. So, yeah.
So if the board agrees, I think we'd request that you work with the two companies to try to make the agreement the same for both of them. I think the 2% escalator is probably the way I would lean, but try to make them the same for both of them. And then I would, if we can get that worked out, I would look to advertise that for public comment. Because any extra money we can get is from equipment that's sitting there, so.
Mr. Chair, too, in the past, we've made money off our tower leases for the service authority, so I don't.
Yeah, I'd like all the terms to be the same, and then if somebody else comes in, like T-Mobile or somebody, they get the same, have the same or better deal type thing.
Yeah, I will say, Mr. Chair, that the templates that they use are different, but I will try to match kind of those essential terms as best I can. So that's understood.
So is everybody in agreement then? Yeah.
And then if I may, Mr. Chair, I have one more matter that just kind of came up that's a little bit time sensitive. Birchwood Power Partners has requested that the Service Authority release and extinguish water and sewer easements that are existing on the Butzner property. That's the property to the west, kind of along the rail line. So they've proposed a document to effectuate that. And I honestly I've just received it myself today. So I'm still reviewing it. I know they are anxious, as I think you all know, to go ahead and proceed with their real estate transactions with Amazon. So I don't know exactly what their timeline is or their expectation, but I didn't know if there was willingness on the part of the board to delegate review of that agreement to Mr. Miller and myself, or if you want me to bring it back to you all at a future meeting.
So I'll make a comment, maybe be blunt about it. Until they have a water agreement in that we're trying to get negotiated with what we're going to done there, I don't have any, propensity to squash those things real quick. They need to get their house in order and get kind of that water agreement and stuff worked out. And when they do that, maybe we can talk about squashing the easements. That's sort of my feeling on the matter.
Mr. Chair, I agree. I'm not comfortable just sight unseen delegating it to staff. I believe it needs to come back to the board. Thank you.
I agree with the same thing.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. I have my marching orders. Appreciate it.
Great. Moving on, Ms. Lackey, you're still going to be up. First up is the adoption of the design build guidelines.
Yes, so this is an item that has not changed in any substantial way from the previous version that you've seen. I did clean up a couple small, I would say non-substantive things about it. The draft is in substantially similar to what was recently adopted by both the school board and the Board of Supervisors. And that is required by law to a large extent because the statutory authority for this type of procurement method requires that the guidelines that are established have to follow very closely those that have been adopted by the state. So they're pretty similar to, as I said, to what the school board and Board of Supervisors have adopted. For anybody who's new to this subject, design build is a procurement method where you hire a single firm or a joint venture. They can team up to both design and build a project. Most procurements are a design bid build. So it's a multiple step process where you hire a firm to design and you get that design completed. And then you do another procurement solicitation to have a construction contractor perform the work. So in some cases, there are efficiencies and cost savings that can sometimes be achieved by this method. I have received some interest from the engineering staff. They have a few, at least, I don't know, maybe a few might be an overstatement, but they have at least one project in mind that they would like to pursue this particular method for if it's approved by the board. So if there are any comments about the drafting, I'd be happy to answer those.
The only thing I said, I've seen this before with the Board of Supervisors, and I understand this is another tool in our toolbox, but I just want to make sure that we also look at construction manager at risk for those bigger projects. But I understand what design build is for certain projects, but I don't want that to be our only option. Thank you.
So I'll just add, working in this realm, design build, you generally see it when you're looking at specialty items that aren't built every day. You often see it on the sewer and water side when you're building a water treatment plant, when you're doing a sewage plant. There's a handful of engineers that do the design, a handful of people who really build those things because they don't go up all the time every day in any specific location. So they're kind of across the country builds. So you tend to see those real specialty items go that way because there's companies that are geared to specifically do that, design it and get it into operation. So it's very, I think almost all the the wastewater plants going and getting upgraded or being constructed in Spotsylvania County right now, they're on design build contracts for those. A couple different companies are doing those, but they are design build. Same as with some of them in Stafford. You tend to see them on specialty items. Something like a school, that ends up a lot of times design build or construction manager at risk, because there's a lot of people who can design a school. There's a lot of architects who can do it, a lot of structural engineers, and darn near any GC who can build anything commercial can build a school. But you do see it, particularly on our side, for those more complicated one-off projects that you don't see come up every day, even in Virginia. So that's just the comment on that.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion. I move adoption of the King George County Service Authority guidelines for the selection, evaluation, and award of design build contracts.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. The guidelines are adopted. Next up, Ms. Lackey again.
So at the last meeting, we brought up for discussion purposes only a proposed resolution to initiate merger of the service authority with the county. Since that meeting, there's been a minor change to the draft resolution just to update the date that the service authority was actually created. The day was, there was a typographical error in the day. I will note also, and I'll seek clarification, Mr. Parker, is your middle initial R? Okay, so if this is approved by the board this evening, we'll also need to update Mr. Parker's middle initial. I'm not sure where we pulled the wrong middle initial from, but we can correct that if it is in fact adopted. As presented at the previous board meeting and also as discussed in the recent joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors, a merger would require resolutions to be approved by both the Board of Directors and the Board of Supervisors. That there would have to be recognition that's either impractical or impossible for the service authority to continue to exist as a separate legal entity, and or that the operations and obligations of the service authority will be assumed by the county. As presented at the last meeting, the service authority's financial consultant concluded that if the debts of the service authority remain obligations of only the income and assets of the service authority, if it's managed as an enterprise fund, there would be no harm to the county's bond rating nor to the county's debt capacity. The merger process would require not only concurrence of the Board of Supervisors, but also the filing of articles of dissolution with the State Corporation Commission after winding up of the service authority's affairs and distribution of its assets. The proposed resolution directs the interim general manager to develop a transition plan with a target completion date for merger by the start of next fiscal year, so by July 1st. However, by law, dissolution cannot be legally effective until the authority's functions have been taken over and all of its obligations have been paid or assumed by another political subdivision, in this case, the county. So there we have kind of an aggressive timeline that we'd like to hit if it's the will of both boards to pursue this merger concept. But by law, it would not happen until we're satisfied that all of the debts and obligations of the service authority have been wound up entirely. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So I guess we'll open it up for discussion.
Well, I do have problems with the resolution, but I'm going to be the only one. I'm sure that is. Well, first of all, to develop a transition plan, I would like to know more about the transition plan. We should have it before we vote on something like this, because I think I'm concerned it's not going to be thorough enough. We also mentioned in this resolution that it's impractical. I don't agree with that. I don't think we explored all the options of the service authority. So I'm not going to keep beating the same drum. I just don't think this is in the best interest of our citizens without exploring all the options and actually having it more fleshed out before we start the process. And Ms. Lackey already said it's an aggressive timeline, and we need to understand this is about economic development. This has been stated numerous times. This is about economic development. So just remember that.
Are there any other comments, questions, concerns? I do know, and this is, I know, been brought up a few times, and I haven't heard, I know, Ms. Pinder's brought it up a couple times. Have we gotten a definite answer from VDH and DEQ on the grant funds? Because I know Ms. Hahn said about the threshold and whatnot, but obviously we don't, if we switch the entity, I don't want the funds being assigned to an entity. We dissolve the entity and then the funds disappear because the entity no longer exists. So that would be problematic. So that's one question. I'll let you answer before
We have not got a specific answer, or I mean, an answer definitively back on that, but it is what our understanding from conversations with the folks was that at the time the county had the ARP funds and the amount of money that the county had received over the certain period of time, they were discouraging any kind of a merger or any kind of a commingling or whatever you want to call it, because it would put you above federal guidelines that kind of trigger the Davis-Bacon. In further investigation, we found that it was it wasn't a cumulative, it was more of a project specific, or so in other words, like Arnold's Corner well replacement over here. If that rose to be $10 million, then we'd have a problem. But that's not the case, obviously. And the county is only getting $5 million from VDH for those projects anyhow. So it is not a situation where they would have any issues with it.
And what about the 16 million on the wastewater?
The same from DEQ.
Okay, so
And DEQ, the reason that DEQ brought it up was in kind of the aftermath of the Dahlgren situation, when Imboden and the county were working through some of the fixes on that. There was, I think, a desire on some of the regulators at DEQ that there not be some kind of change put in place at the county level while we're in the middle of responding to what they were asking us to do. A number of those regulators have moved on, and I don't believe that's the position anymore. I think that they are very happy, obviously, with what Imboden is doing and the stance that the county took to bring in a private operator. They have, very much are cheering that on. And so I don't think it had anything to do with the merger, whether it's a utility or whether it was a separate authority.
And then just one kind of clarification. This proposal isn't specifically because of economic development. It does make it easier, but the service authority is not a separate entity of the county. I don't care how you look at it. We sort of have a general manager, but all the higher functions of the service authority are run by the county. We use county's HR, we use county's finance, we use county's procurement. It's all, we have the county attorney as our attorney. If it was a separate entity, all those things would have to be in-house under a roof. So we're not functioning as a separate entity. It's a quasi separate entity. It's literally a utility. If I were to take you over to Stafford or Spotsy and show you their utility department, it's by and large exactly what we're doing here, except we have a weird separation where the service authorities got a board, and you can set it up with citizen advisors, and so I do tend to agree with Ms. Binder. It may be good to flesh some of this out a little before like kind of put the things in a little bit in reverse, because if you've got the plan fleshed out, as soon as you vote on this, then you can initiate the plan. So you can't.
Mr. Chair, so the last section of the resolution reads, be it further resolved that the interim general manager, in consultation with the county attorney and financial consultants, develop a transition plan to effectuate merger and file articles of dissolution with the State Corporation Commission in the event that the Board of Supervisors adopts a resolution concurring in the proposed dissolution. So I would offer to you, Ms. Bender, you are on that board as well. So you will have another opportunity. We will have some time because I do not believe this is on the agenda for this evening for the Board of Supervisors meeting. You mentioned in your board report a co-op was a possibility. So if you'd like to bring us that, I would love to hear more about it. But as you stated, you were on the committee that worked on this, and we didn't hear about that until tonight. So if we could hear more about that, I would love to hear more about it. But no, this doesn't happen unless the Board of Supervisors adopts a resolution concurring in the proposed dissolution. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would like to, I just heard about the co-op option today, so I would be more than willing to look into that. But what I'm trying to say is when we had those talks on the committees, we brought back some things to further it, and it just never went anywhere. There was no appetite. So that's why I'm bringing it up. I wish we could have explored some of those options more, because I know Ms. Cleveland, I wish she was here tonight, because I'm actually going to agree with her on a point she has made numerous times about being run like a business. And maybe we should have looked a little bit more at the business, like a business manager, and bringing some of those jobs over. You know, we said for the years the county has been doing stuff for free, but maybe we should have farmed it out and made it more of a business, because from what I'm hearing is, you know, that is one of the options, and it probably was a better option. And we can't go back and fix the past, but we can make sure in the future we try to do our best to do it the right way and set it up the right way. Thank you.
So Ms. Lackey, here's kind of a question. What it sounds like from the section that Ms. Kupka read is that you actually have to present kind of that game plan to the Board of Supervisors before they even vote on a resolution. That's what it sounded like in that paragraph, that you'd have, we'd vote on this and they'd come up with a plan, but that has to go to the supervisors before they would even vote on a resolution.
So the way it is drafted is that if the Board of Supervisors concurs by resolution, then the developing of the transition plan will happen. But that is not legally required. If you all wanted to develop a transition plan, or at least have some benchmarks to bring forward before you do so, you could. But the kind of the sense that I got in drafting this, which doesn't necessarily reflect what we have to reflect what the Board of Directors have, but at the joint meeting, there was kind of a sense to move with, to kind of get things expedited so that things might align with the budget process for the next fiscal year. So that was the intent behind the drafting in such a way, but that doesn't have to be the exclusive way of.
Yeah, I'm saying I still agree with the timeline. I'm just saying, and it might be that you flip it so if we vote on the resolution, they start, right? They make the plan. And then that way the supervisors would get it, before they vote on it, would take a look at that plan and make sure they concur and make the switch, or is that too late in the process? But yeah, I know that's one it'd have to be. Would we need to reword it, or I don't? You've obviously heard my opinion. I think we're already a utility as it is. And then there's discussion at the supervisor level that we can bring out, but
I've been pretty straightforward. I'm a no on this, so you do what you want to do, but I think this is wrong.
Mr. Chair, a motion.
all right.
Move to adopt the resolution by the Board of Directors to initiate process for termination and dissolution of the service authority by merger with King George County as presented, with the amendment to Chairman Alan Parker's name should read Alan R. Parker Jr.
I second.
We have a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. General Manager's report.
Okay, excuse me. So we have Ms. Southall is here. She is going to present a little draft video that she has put together. We have been talking about the history of the service authority and how things started happening with rates and when rate plans went into effect and things like that. And so we were going to do some posts that were going to be on the website or, you know, specifically put together in some package that might be on some of our other social media platforms. But I think Ms. Southall had a better idea that let's consider doing something that would have a lasting impact. It would be available. It would be, you know, something that people could refer to over time, 6 months from now, a year from now. And so I think she wanted to present that to you all tonight and then get any feedback you have. I realize that maybe this is the first time you're looking at it. If you want to look at it a little bit later, you can get back with Ms. Southall and we can amend, you know, how she's put this together. But go ahead.
Yes, good evening, members of the board. So based off of your recommendation for me to look into this and then looking at the information from the last couple of meetings as well as the public's responses on social media, determined that it might be better for us to do a visual route for pushing out a video that does a general overview, basically a Service Authority 101, and then refer people to additional information on the website with hopes that people would actually view this and read this and be interested enough to read more details further on the website. So this is the draft. I apologize that it was not in your packet. I just finished it like 30 minutes before the meeting. So I'm happy to send this to you all after the meeting as well. But this is for you to have initial impacts and reactions to the video. King George County Service Authority, an overview of functions, operations, and financial structure. In Virginia, a service authority is formed when one or more governing bodies agrees to provide public water and wastewater services to its residents under the powers conferred by the Virginia Water and Sewer Authorities Act of 1950. The King George Service Authority was established in 1992 and began with the acquisition of public water and wastewater utility services provided by various neighborhoods in the county, including the Dahlgren and Fairview Beach sanitary districts. As more housing developments were completed, the Service Authority expanded to provide utilities to more customers. From approximately 900 customers in the 1990s to nearly 4,600 customers today, the Service Authority has grown to accommodate water and wastewater services to nearly 17% of King George residents. The Service Authority operates as a public body politic and political subdivision, which means that the Commonwealth of Virginia views the authority as its own entity separate of, but still affiliated with, the county. As such, the authority is comprised of a nonpartisan board of directors. This board has 5 members, currently comprised of 2 representatives from the Board of Supervisors and 3 appointed by the Board of Supervisors as representatives of neighborhoods served by the authority. The Board of Directors appoints its own chair and vice chair and establishes policies, adopts a budget, sets rates, and oversees operations. The board appoints a general manager, who serves as chief administrative officer and supervises daily operations, hires operating staff, and carries out the orders of the board. While the board can designate and hire its own staff to carry out additional functions of the authority, the board may instead request to utilize the resources of the county. The Service Authority currently receives assistance from many county departments, including administration, legal, finance and procurement, human resources, and engineering. Although service authorities can levy taxes in Virginia as a revenue source, this is seldom used once an authority is well established financially. Most authorities' largest revenue source is the monthly or bi-monthly charges for services provided to customers. For the King George Service Authority, general funds were utilized to purchase initial water and wastewater systems in the 1990s and have rarely been used since. Once the authority had management over these systems, rates quickly became the primary revenue source, shifting Service Authority financial operations to an enterprise fund. An enterprise fund utilizes revenue collected from bills for water and wastewater services solely as a reinvestment into Service Authority operations. As part of an enterprise fund, customer rates are designed to recover operational costs. If the Service Authority needs to spend monies not available in the enterprise fund, then the Service Authority will leverage its credit to apply for the issuance of a bond. The Service Authority has very strong credit in conjunction with the county. Bonds are typically sought as a solution to fund large projects like infrastructure improvements, such as replacing depreciating assets like treatment plants, wells, and water and sewer lines. The Service Authority borrows monies utilizing bonds, then plans repayment of the principal and interest over time through the collection of rates and fees by its customers, as users directly benefit from the improvements. This process maintains the Service Authority's enterprise fund financial structure. The Service Authority works diligently to meet state and federal regulatory standards and permit requirements for the well-being of King George's health, safety, and environment. Service Authority meetings are open to the public. The Board of Directors meets regularly on the first and third Tuesday of each month at 5:30 p.m. in the boardroom at the Administration Building. Agendas and minutes are published online. The public is encouraged to attend these meetings to get involved and learn more about the Service Authority. Thank you for learning more about King George County Service Authority. Additional information is available online. If you have questions, please call 540-775-2746.
Open to any questions or comments.
I thought it was very good.
It was good. One thing, you probably already noticed it, there was a typo at the beginning.
I haven't had time to copy edit, so thank you.
And then there's one history fact in there I'll talk to you on offline about that.
Okay.
But very good. I think it's good because a lot of people have asked, could you please tell me how it was created and what it really does? Because it is confusing to a lot of people. They make a lot of assumptions, and it is our job to educate the citizens because you can't know everything. And I appreciate the effort you put into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think probably the formation part. There's a couple details, and that might be what Ms. Binder's talking about. That will explain why it was formed and why the debt got where it was right at the beginning. Because that's always a question. Why is the debt so high? So, but it was very good. I think it's something people will watch, listen to. Good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank you for putting the page on the Service Authority website titled Rates, Billing, and Payment, because it very clearly lays out what each of the categories are. So thank you.
And I think we're on information items.
I think I had a couple more items just on here, just a couple updates on the general manager's report. I will tell you this. So we're still working with Davenport on maybe having some actual number information on that video in terms of, here's your debt. The amount that you pay in debt is based on these reasons, and maybe, kind of a historical overview of why that's the case. So, but I do appreciate what Ms. Southall did. I think it's a very good way to capture it all. So just a couple items. So last week, and Mr. Morris pointed out, we've got some little corrections that we'll put to the letter, but we have a semi-annual reporting that we have to do to DEQ on the pump stations. And, that's essentially those alarms that we have that we were talking about. Do certainly appreciate the work that Mr. Eisenbeis and his crews did in response to the one that Ms. Binder had reported and notified us of. But, there's a ton of these things throughout the county, these pump stations, and we have to provide a report every 6 months to the Department of Environmental Quality. And so we just turned one in. And so we're working on a number of projects that are associated with that. And we'll get those updates on that letter that we sent. Just some office closures. November 7th is Election Day. So the offices will be closed. November 10th, which is Veterans Day, Friday. The offices will be closed as well. And then, of course, Thanksgiving, the 23rd and the 24th. So your next regular meeting is the 14th of November at 5:30 PM. Just wanted to let you all know that.
Are there any questions for Mr. Mo? All right, looking for a motion, I guess.
I make a motion, we adjourn until Tuesday, November 14th, 2023 at 5:30 PM here in the Combs Boardroom.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. We are adjourned to Tuesday, November 14th, 2023 at 5:30 PM here in the boardroom.